Hey, I'm here because I want to interview Buck Taylor, our head baseball coach, and this is regarding, we teach advanced first aid together, huh, Buck?
Yep.
And so we had an event here that, it never goes as planned, and so I want to hear, or Buck's going to tell us how it went one day about, what was it, about a year ago?
Almost 2 years, yeah.
2 years ago. So what was happening, Buck? You were playing a game?
Yeah, we were playing a game against Mount San Jacinto Community College. I was coaching third base, and I looked up in the stands, and there was kind of a ruckus going on in the stands, and I realized that they had started CPR compressions on one of the fans.
He was kind of heavy, diabetic guy.
Yeah, kind of a heavier, older gentleman. I immediately ran to home plate, told the umpire to stop the game. Got both teams to get in their dugouts and stay in their dugouts.
Yeah, but before you get to that, it was going on for a while, wasn't it?
I mean, obviously compressions had started, so after I spoke with the umpire, I ran directly to the fence, and I asked if we're given 30 and 2, and they were both kind of.
Who was doing the compressions?
Two parents, and one of them happened to be the Padres first base coach, Rick Renneria, and his comment was, "There's blank coming out of his mouth." I noticed the guy's compressions were fairly low. I asked him to raise his compressions and for Rick to do a finger sweep.
Did you say between the nipples, or what'd you say? Could you see him
said,
going too low?
Yeah, I mean, you could see him pushing well below the sternum.
Right.
So I'd asked him to raise his compressions between the nipples or the center line of the chest. I asked Rick Renneria to do a finger sweep, and
because he was throwing up the whole time because they were going too low?
They were pushing food up out of his stomach, yeah. Rick looked at me in amazement, and I just kind of said, "Hey, hook the food," tilt his head to the side, hook the food. And again, he was in the bleachers on a fairly, an 8-inch wide panel.
Right.
Once they got going on that, and compressions were better, there wasn't food, I dialed 911, I dialed campus police, and then I dialed our trainer because I knew our trainer had an AED. The campus police got here right away. I asked them for an AED.
How long did that take? A couple minutes for them to all get
Probably 2 minutes. The response time was very good. After that, I had noticed when I had the AED in my hand, and this is when it got scary, I'm going, all right, here we go. I noticed Flecicia, our head trainer, coming down with an AED, and our decision was to keep him where he was. It was going to be too difficult to move him. There wasn't an open space that was clear enough, I didn't think, for us to continue.
Right. Are you with your team, or you were up there?
I was up there. Our assistant coaches had the teams. Both teams were in their dugouts.
Perfect.
And Flecicia attached the AED, and our concern was aluminum bench, AED. We weren't,
what are we gonna do?
We had no other option, and she started the AED, and I believe right when our first blast with the AED, paramedics arrived, right? Yeah, and they came and took over, and
after that, they took them on.
That was that. They were in charge. So
right.
once they arrived, they were in charge.
Perfect. Thanks. It never goes as planned, and that's kind of what we want to do. So we'll show you the spot and a couple other things coming up. We'll interview you next, Flecicia. Hi, I'm with Flecicia, who's our trainer here. How many years you been here?
20 years.
Yeah, and how many times have you done CPR on anybody before this incident?
0.
0, like all of us have done that one. So Felicia's going to tell you, she's going to take up where Buck left off, and she's going to describe what happened. So you came in from over there. What was the call on? What was the call?
Well, I was in the athletic training room, and an athlete came in and said that somebody was injured on the baseball field. So naturally, I just went over and grabbed a bag of ice. I grabbed a little fanny pack I usually take out with me, got in the cart, and I drove down, and as I rode...
That's all you got? You thought someone was injured?
Yes. And it was kind of funny because, well, not funny, but when I left, another athlete came in and told Dennis, the other athletic trainer, that there was somebody actually in that heart attack. But I was already gone at the time, and so as I drove up in the cart, just down over here to the left, I saw 2 men up on the stands doing CPR on somebody, and so I immediately threw the bag of ice down and thought,
oh my goodness.
Oh my goodness, I didn't bring my AED with me, but I noticed the campus police were here.
Perfect.
So I went over and I said, "Where's the AED?" And they said, "It's right here on the bench." So I went over.
So was it right down here?
It was just down there on the, just to the left on the bottom bench.
And where's our victim?
Our victim is right here.
And what's he look like? Is he a heavy guy?
He's an older gentleman.
Diabetic, I heard.
Yeah. I don't know if I didn't have a lot of information about him. When I came here, they were doing CPR, and first thing I thought is get the AED on him because that's the only way he's going to make it. So
well, that's taking too long. Was this guy about 300 pounds? Was he pretty heavy?
He was a pretty heavy guy.
So,
he was pretty big.
So that's all comes into the why you're not going to move this guy.
Right.
Okay, so what happened?
Well, the other thing was when we put the AED on him, looking at the space, it was ideal for that situation because we had the back bars kind of bracing him up.
So he's right here.
So he's right here.
Yeah.
If we were to try to move him, there's not a lot of space down there. And we have to pick up this large man downstairs, so it was just easier to leave him where he was.
Right.
And like Buck mentioned earlier, the aluminum benches, but that wasn't our major concern right there. We're just so I opened the pads up, put them on.
What's he look like now? So they've been doing CPR on him for a couple minutes. Does he look blue? Does he look...
he was very pale.
Yeah, yeah. But there's nothing coming out of him? No eye, no movement, no nothing?
Nothing. There's no movement, anything.
So did you hook the AED? Was that frantic? Were your hands shaking?
No,
what were you like?
It's kind of interesting when you're called on to do any type of emergency situation. What we're trained for is you just go in a mode.
So you did go into the mode.
I just opened the AED, opened the pads up, and there was a lady that was trying to unbutton his shirt, kind of like, and I just took it and just ripped it open.
Good for you.
And then just put the pads on, and then we all made sure we were clear.
Pretty self-explanatory where the pads go. Shows are right there.
Right over the chest.
You cleared everybody.
Cleared everybody. It was interesting because there were people still sitting along these benches, so we made sure everybody was off that top bench.
Good.
And then right when we got ready to shock him, I noticed that the gentleman that was doing the CPR on him, he was touching him, and I go, no, back away. So we cleared it and shocked him.
Now, wait. Wasn't there the old, do we really want to shock him on an aluminum bench?
That was like a split second before, but
and you pretty much said, screw it.
That's what we've got to go with. What we got to go with.
And what happened? So when I see it in the movies, or since I've been teaching this for 20 years, I always tell them it's just like a little like that, because that's what I see in the movies.
No, his chest went up, his back arched, and his head hit on the aluminum bench.
So it was a big jolt. Boy, it's just so shocking.
And even after that, we weren't sure we were going to have to shock him again.
Yeah.
So somebody actually put a shirt underneath his head because when his head went down on the aluminum,
it did bang, right? Okay. All right. So then what did the machine read after that?
I just said checking vitals. It says continue CPR, and at that time, that's when the paramedics showed up.
Good.
So they showed up and immediately just took over, and we just kind of cleared the way, and they transported to the hospital.
Did a bunch of people carry him off? Was that an easy thing for them to do? I guess the pros could do it. They put the board under.
They put the board on him, lifted him, and just put him right on the gurney, and they just put him in the ambulance.
Off they went. So, and to finalize, a great job for this, by the way. Thanks for doing this one. You got to tell me, so he was in a coma for a couple of days, or?
Yeah, I believe he was in a coma for about 2 or 3 days, and then the doctor actually came in and spoke with the family and asked the family, he said, we're going to talk about taking him off.
Yeah, this guy's not going to make it. He's old.
Yeah. And they said, no, we're going to wait one more day. And I found out 2 weeks later he had something like quadruple bypass, and he lived.
And fine.
And he's fine. He doesn't remember much about that day, but I tell you one thing, I'll take one day over a whole life.
Oh, unbelievable. So great story and a great job. Thanks, Flecicia, for doing this.
You're welcome.
And here we are with Flecicia again, because most of us never do CPR in our entire lives, and Flecicia had a second call. And this is a year later after the first one?
About a year and a half later.
Year and a half later. So set it up. What happened? What was the call on this one, Flecicia?
Well, that's the interesting part, because when I was told a certain situation, our head coach, Lacey Kraft, was told another situation.
What were you told? You were told?
I was told that there was somebody on the tennis courts having a seizure.
And Lacey was told?
Lacey was told that somebody had slipped and fell on the asphalt out here.
And Dennis?
And Dennis was told that somebody had either passed out or something out here by the tennis courts.
This is the same situation.
Same situation.
Never goes by textbook. So, once again, you're not thinking CPR again?
No.
So what happens?
I come running out here, and I see the older gentleman laying on the ground, and our head coach is already here.
So he's right here on the ground?
He's laying down here on the ground.
So supposedly he fell, looked like he just clutched his chest. He goes down. Can you describe our victim, please?
He was an elderly gentleman. He was, late 70s, around there. And when I got here, he was actually unconscious.
Is he overweight? Is he looking? He's pretty good shape. Just
like
average.
He was average.
Average guy.
Yeah, he was just an average-looking guy.
So you walk down, or you're coming down here pretty quick, and you're picking it up now that you see he's down, and he's down. So what happens?
The coach had told me that he didn't have a pulse, so I immediately went around.
Who was this, Lacey?
This was Lacey.
Lacey was actually checking the neck?
Yeah, she was checking at that time.
Good for her.
She got up here a lot quicker than I did.
Yeah.
And we're talking seconds. I mean, this was only so many seconds after I was told.
And this gentleman's coming down to watch a softball game because he
softball.
has people that he knows. Okay.
Yes,
All right, go ahead.
So I was looking at the situation because this concrete is slanted, and there was no way I was going to be able to stay on that side and do CPR if I had to. So I came around underneath the pole, and I'm actually standing right now. So I'm behind a wall.
So this is where you were?
This is where I was.
So he's down here, head here, body here.
And I was under the pole where
Are you checking for his pulse too?
I had checked on this side because his head was kind of turned slightly awkward.
Was he bleeding or anything from the fall?
From the fall, we couldn't see any blood at the time.
All right.
And then when I was checking for a pulse, I had put my hand on his chest.
Yeah.
And then right when I put my hand on his chest, he actually sat up a quarter of the way.
Was he breathing?
At that time, he was gurgling.
So it was just a...
It was a exhale and a slight inhale, so then he went back down.
But you couldn't find the pulse still, and you're going, why is this guy rising?
Yeah.
They never teach us that.
No, they don't teach you that.
All right.
So we're going, oh, maybe
but
he's
were you pressing his chest, or you just touched his chest?
I just barely touched his chest.
And he rises up a little
bit. And his
bit.
shirt was still on. So then
now what do you do?
Lacey was checking it. In the meantime, there was a student from Cerritos, an athletic trainer student, that came up to his head and started stabilizing his head. And she had just recently been CPR certified that Wednesday, so this is on a Friday.
Wow.
So she had her mask out and was ready to perform the breaths, and I was in position to do the chest compressions.
Perfect.
And then I put my hand on his chest and had done about 2 chest compressions.
Yes.
And then right when I was ready to do my 3rd one, he sat up again, a quarter of the way. And by that time, it was just gurgling, and he just expressed the air out.
Are there any eyes open or anything?
The eyes were open, but
but there's no movement. He's not saying anything. He's yeah. How tough was that? That a little bit tough?
Yeah, it was hard, but again, you kind of go in an automatic mode. There's no time to think about it. You just start doing it.
So he rises up a little bit, he goes back down a second time, and you're going, I got to do CPR on this guy.
Yeah.
So what happens?
So then Dennis comes down and says, what do you need? And I go, get the AED. And he immediately ran up. And this is all, I believe, within about a 2-minute period from when all this occurred.
Excellent.
And I got underneath the pole and started doing chest compressions, and Dennis came down with the AED.
About a minute later, he comes down?
I don't even think it was a minute.
Yeah.
It was like...
Hey, Dennis, was it close? The AED, was it tough to get it?
No, I knew exactly where it was.
It's in your office, in the training room and stuff?
It's always in the same spot. Everybody knows where it is for that very reason.
Perfect. So you're giving him CPR. He comes down with the AED. Now, how long are you giving him chest compressions for? About a minute?
Maybe about 25, 30 seconds around there, and then the AED came down, and I continued to do the chest compressions, and then after about another 20 or so seconds, it said to stop, and they were checking and everything, and then it said to shock.
So it did say shock.
So it did say shock.
Once again, hooked up the pads. Is this the same AED you used in the same one?
I believe it was.
Yeah, so there's no difference.
We have 2, but we seem to use the same one. Maybe we should use another one.
So it shocks them, and everybody stays clear.
Everybody stays clear, and then
was it the same as the other guy? Dunk? Did he come up pretty high?
He did come up, but not as high as on the aluminum.
You think that was the aluminum factor?
I think the aluminum factor.
Okay.
A little bit. But again, it was the angle.
All right.
But then I continued to do chest compressions, and by this time the paramedics had showed up.
Now the machine tells you continue CPR.
Yes.
And then how long did that go for? Another minute or 2 while you're continuing giving them compressions?
Yeah, the one thing about this one is that it never, when the paramedics got here, they actually switched out the AEDs.
Good.
And they put them on their AED.
Which is probably more.
Yeah, it was a lot better.
More advanced.
But it never shocked them again, and I continued with the chest compressions.
They didn't do you kept doing the CPR?
I kept doing the chest compressions because I was in the perfect spot.
Did they ask you?
I was right over. Yeah, they asked me if I was okay, and I said I'm fine. I can continue, and I continued. It seemed about 30 minutes, but I was told later it was probably about 7 or 8 minutes.
Wow. How exhausted were you after this?
I think with the adrenaline, I was still, I was okay. I was still in shock of everything that happened. Yeah. And then I ended up having to drive the granddaughter to the hospital.
What was it like driving?
I was just kind of, I was all right because I had to be all right because I had to hold myself up for her. And it didn't hit me until I think when I was driving home and I called my husband and told him what happened.
Right.
Then I lost it.
Yeah.
So.
Me too. I would have been right there with it. Hey, were you sweating, drenched in sweat? Were you exhausted, or once again, I just went? I don't even know.
I just went. I noticed that whenever the paramedics said go ahead and stop, and they were doing the breast checking. They'd ask me to stop, and I would roll my wrist because they were a little tired.
Right.
I started counting because I needed to get out of what was actually happening, kind of separate myself.
Right.
I was up at about 250 chest compressions at one point.
So you just kept counting 1, 2, 3, 4. Were they giving a breath at all, or you just said compressions?
Yeah, I just did compressions the whole time, and I think
press hard, press deep. Compressions is where it's at. Yeah, very good.
Very rarely did they do the breaths on it, and they had the bag and everything, but it was.
All right. So they took this guy off. Once again, they took him off, and by the way, that's our fire station right here, fire station number 1. Off they go. You go home, do the whole thing, but is it still bothering you a little bit? I mean,
yeah,
when I talked to you, it seemed like it was
It
a little
does.
bit. And so you wanted to get an update from the paramedics. Now, how did that turn out? Did you call them up, or what happened?
About the AED?
Yeah, or just call them up and go, hey, why was this guy rising up? What's going on? You know?
Yeah, they don't tell you things that that could possibly occur while you're doing the CPR. You go into class, you take your class, you have the anti-doll laying there, and you listen to the video or listen to the tape, and they tell you what's going on, and you do your chest compressions, you do your breaths.
Yes.
But they don't tell you that the body is still functioning, and there's nerve impulses that are going to fire off, and they're going to get a response. So possibly when I touched my hand on his chest, that was enough response for the nerves to fire off in the brain that he responded that way naturally.
They're telling you this?
Yeah.
They come back here to tell you that?
Yes.
Oh, wow, that was nice. So was that just an update for you?
Yeah, he had to come in and take a test on our AED to see what the rhythms and things were on the AED.
Wow.
And then he said, sometimes they will sit up a quarter of the way. Sometimes all they'll do is express air. They'll get the gurgling. And
wasn't his comment because it's never the same?
It's never the same. You're never in this. You never have the same situation. And a year and a half later, I'm doing it twice, and it was completely different from the first time I did it to the second time I did it.
Did it bother you to picture like, I couldn't find his pulse. Maybe he does have a pulse and stuff. I mean, I keep thinking, aren't all of you going there? But it just became so obvious this guy needed help, and compressions was the only thing you could do.
Well, they said that, the paramedics said that when you arrive at a scene and somebody's unconscious and they're not breathing, you're already in panic mode and you've already taken 2 or 3 breaths.
Yeah.
So if you're in panic mode and you've already taken 2 or 3, that person hasn't even taken 1 within your 2 or 3.
Right.
So you need to start.
He needs that heart going.
He needs that heart going as soon as possible.
Well, great job. And unfortunately, this gentleman did not make it.
No, he did not.
Yeah. Did he even make it to the hospital? Was he DOA?
When we arrived at the hospital, we were called in a private room, and the doctor came in, and that's when they had pronounced him dead.
And this gentleman had a long history of
medical
problems and stuff. It was just too bad. But anyway, Felicia, thanks again for doing a great job and making me explain this to you and coming out there. All right, that's great. Thanks, Dennis.